all the time. If you want to read the words, you can read the words. I'm not going to read the words to you. We're going to draw a picture because when in doubt, draw it out. That way it's easier for you to like recognize. Okay. So vertical angles are congruent to each other. So we're going to draw a little line. We're basically going to draw two lines that intersect. They're going to cross, but I don't want it to be like straight perpendicular. I don't want it to be like straight up. I want it to be a little like sideways, I guess. So try to make your, kind of looks like a multiplication symbol. And then inside your angles, we're going to add specific numbers. We're not going to, these aren't angles, but we're going to call this angle 1. This is angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4. So they're not degrees. It's not 1 degree. Vertical angles are across from each other. They are congruent to each other. So if you're looking at your picture, angle 2 is an obtuse angle. The other obtuse angle would be angle 4. So if I knew that angle 2 was like 100 degrees, I could automatically in my math problem put 100 degrees at angle 4. So if they're across from each other, they're congruent. So I'm going to say angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. Those are the same. So if I knew one was 100 degrees, the other one automatically would be 100 degrees. The other two are both acute. They're also across from each other. Thanks. They're also across from each other. So these ones, they're both itsy bitsy teeny weeny. Those are congruent to each other. So I could say angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. So vertical angles are across, and you can just put the number wherever it's at. So if it's 100, it's 100. If the other one's 60, the other one's 60. Okay. The next thing is adjacent angles. These are angles that are actually touching each other. So I'm going to draw an obtuse angle. So I have an obtuse angle. And then I'm going to draw a ray, not going through the middle. It's not like bisecting it. It's not cutting it in half, but I'm going to go from the center and I'm going to kind of come out a little bit. So one's a little bit obtuse and one's like acute. You can go ahead to the bathroom if you want. These are next to each other. They are sharing a common side. So this right here is your common side. Common side. So if they ever look like that, that means they're adjacent angles. So back to this like vertical angle picture, 1 and 2 technically are adjacent because they're next to each other. They share this. 1 and 4 are adjacent because they share this, okay? And you can go all the way around, but 2 and 4 are not adjacent because they're across the intersection. 1 and 3 are not adjacent because they're across. So adjacent is next to it, it shares a side. The ones that people get the most confused with are these two because they tell you how much to add up to. So complementary angles says any two angles whose sum is 90 degrees. Sum means you're adding. Supplementary says any two angles whose sum is 180 degrees. So one's 90, one's 180. And this is where people are like, which one is it? So the way to remember this is complementary, the C in complementary, kind of if you draw like a little line, it looks like a 90 degrees because you have the C that's like the 9, and then you have the O that's the 0. The S, if you connect the S going across, it looks like an 8. So that's one way to remember like 180. The S would be the 180. The C represents the 9 for 90. Because it might give you, it might say like the measure of angle 1's 50 degrees. Angle 1 and angle 2 are complementary. What would angle 2 be? So it would be super easy. It would just be like 40 or whatever I said. I don't even know what the numbers I said, but it would just be subtracting. But if some people think it's like the 180 versus the 90. So we're going to draw two pictures. So I want, we're going to draw like a V. So that's one angle. And then I'm going to draw like a sideways V. Boop. So if I said one of these angles was 30 degrees, what would the other one have to be complementary? 60, because I got to add to make 90. And then it's the same thing for supplementary. If I have, now these are going to kind of be big because it's 180, so I'm going to have one obtuse angle. And I'm going to have like one acute angle. If I said that my obtuse angle is, I'm going to use really easy numbers. But if this one was like 140 degrees, what would the other one have to be? To make 40, to make 180. Good. So if it says complementary, adds to make 90, supplementary, adds to make 180. And then the last new thing we're going to talk about is a linear pair. So think a pair means 2. And then linear means line. So linear, line. Line adds to make 180. And then the key to this is, because people are like, it's the same thing as supplementary. Linear pair has to be adjacent and supplementary at the same time. So we're going to draw a straight line. So they have to be adjacent, so they have to be combined, and they have to add to make 180. So here's my 180. I need a pair of angles, so I'm going to draw just a little angle going out. And I can use the same numbers as the other picture. This could be like 140 degrees. This could be 40 degrees. So it's literally smushing this vocab word with this vocab word. Linear pair is adjacent, and then it's also supplementary. That's pretty much it. Okay, so we're going to look at different pictures and we're going to have to pick what relationships they have. So if I look at number 1 down below, I'm given a picture. There is one thing that they are out of these vocab words. So for number 1, if I'm looking at angle 1 and angle 2, what type of angles are these? There's one correct answer. Vertical. Heck yeah, that's it. Boop. Okay. So vertical angles are across from each other. So if I know this is 60 degrees for some reason, then this is going to be 60 degrees. They are congruent. So if it's across, they're congruent. For number 2, angle 1 and angle 2 are next to each other. So if they're next to each other like this and they share a common side, what is that? Adjacent. And they're technically one other thing. If I combine 1 and 2 together, if I add these, would it make 90 or would it make 180? 90, because this side is 90, so automatically I know the other side is 90 degrees. So 1 and 2, if I add them together, it's going to be complementary because complementary is adding to make 90. For number 3, looks very similar to number 1. We have a crisscross. They are not across from each other, so they are not vertical this time. So what would these be? This has like 3 correct answers. Adjacent, because they're touching. They share a common side, so they share this part. If I added 1 and 2 together, how much would that add to make? No. Oh yeah, 180. I thought you said 90. I was like, what? So 180. So is that complementary or supplementary? Supplementary. And then anytime that is adjacent and supplementary, it's also a linear pair. Okay, good. We're like catching on. Number 4, take a second, look at number 4. Number 4 has 1 correct answer. Adjacent. Heck yeah. Okay, so a lot of people think it's complementary all day. People have been saying complementary. It looks like it's 90 degrees, but if it does not have the square, then you cannot assume it's 90 degrees because it might be 89 degrees. So if they don't have the square, you can't say it's 90. So that one's just adjacent. That's it. So question 5. If I'm looking at 1 and 2, what kind of angles are those? Vertical angles, okay? Because they are across, if I know that this one is whatever, this one would also be that same amount because they're crisscross. And then this one is a little bit hard. Does anybody think that there's technically one more answer here? Does anybody think they know what it would be? This one's like stumped people all day. Oh, not adjacent. Huh? Yes. So this one's also complementary, and I'll explain why because nobody's gotten this all day. Because this is 90, this piece would also be 90 in total. And then what it's doing is this is saying it's an angle bisector, so it's splitting it. So if I split 90 in half, this would be 45 and this would be 45. And since 1 and 2 are vertical, then 45 would go here. So if I took angle 1 and angle 2 and I added them together, it would still make 90 degrees. So that's like going a little bit harder and a little bit more in depth, but they are complementary. Okay, so number 6 has 2 correct answers. So what's one of them? They're not complementary. People see the 90 and they're like, it's 90. But if this is 90, then this is 90. So if I add 1 and 2 together, actually, how much is it? 100. Yes. So because this is 90, that side is 90, but we're talking about 1 and 2 added together. 1 and 2, 90 and 90 would make 180. And then what other kind of angles are they? Vertical, because they're across from each other. So vertical and supplementary. So that's pretty much it for like the vocab. Let's do some math problems. We're not doing all of these. I'll tell you which ones you're skipping later. So we're gonna kind of skip around a little bit just so that way we're not doing all of one kind together. So on this paper, so this will be for your notebook. This is number 18. So for let's start with number 4. So number 4 has a lot of things going on in your picture. You have X, Y's, and Z's. And some of you are super high level thinkers and you can just kind of mess with the numbers and figure it out, which is fine. Some of you need kind of like a process to follow. So whenever you have X, Y, and Z problems, I think it's easiest if you start with just finding X and then find Y and then find Z. So if you go in alphabetical order, sometimes that helps. So if I am just looking at my X and my 43, because I don't know anything else, how could I find X if I know next to it is 43? How much would they add to make in total? 180, because technically this is a linear pair. So they're adding to make that straight line. So in a calculator, we don't even have to really show math. In a calculator, if I take 180 and I subtract 43, how much would X be? Somebody with a calculator. What is it? 137. So you don't need to show the work for this. You could literally just kind of plug it into the calculator. This needs to make 180. All I did was subtract them to get this. Now, if I look at Y, okay, so let's pretend like Z doesn't exist. If I look at Y, it's 43. Yes, because this and this are vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent. So you can either think this is 43 and this is 43 because vertical angles, or you can go around and think about that's 137 and 43, you got to add to make 180 again. So you can keep adding to make 180 every single time. You're working around kind of like a circle. So then what would Z have to be? 137. And that's because if this is 43, this is 43 vertical angles. I already know this is 137. It's a big angle that's going to match over here. Okay. So if you have X, Y, and Z and you're lost, start with X, then go to Y, then go to Z. Let's go to number 9. So number 9, because people freak out when there's words in math class. Number 9 says angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair. This is why we need like that little sheet with our vocab words. How much does a linear pair add to make? 180, because it's a straight line. So we're thinking 180 degrees is my total. If the measure of angle 1 is 113, we have to find the measure of angle 2. So what are we going to do with these two numbers? Are we going to add them or are we going to subtract them? Subtract. So if I subtract them, what do I get? 67 degrees. Good. Okay. Let's the top part is really easy. You need a calculator, but you don't need to show any work because it's just adding and subtracting. Okay. Let's go to 11, where you would actually need to show work. So for number 11, just like on Friday, I'm going to take my information and I'm going to put it in my picture. So 11, what is that? 11 says if line AB is upside down capital T, which you're like, what the heck is that? We talked about that last week. Does anybody remember what the little thing means? How much perpendicular, which is how much in degrees? Yeah, bring me your phone. It's 90 degrees. So it's saying it's a perfect little like 90-degree angle. So AB is perpendicular to CD. I have to find the measure, or the measure of DCE is 7x plus 2. So I'm going to put that in my picture. So DCE is 7x plus 2. I'm going to put the other piece of information in my picture. ECB is x plus 8. ECB is x plus 8. And then I have to find this measure, so don't worry about this until later because we have to find x first. And then we'll have to plug it back in. So we'll look at that later. So if I know that it's perpendicular, it's 90 degrees, okay? If one side is 90, the other side is also 90. So what is the equation that I could use? There's two different things you could do here. Does anybody know? Think about Friday, piece plus piece equals whole. Yes. Or you could add them all up and equal to 180. But Gabby's way is easier because you know half of it's going to automatically be 90. So why make your life harder than it needs to be? So I'm going to add half of it to make 90. So I could do 7x plus 2 plus x plus 8 equals 90. If you want to add in the other 90 and equal it to 180, that's fine. Your equation is just going to be longer. So algebra was very like, here's the quadratic formula. Let's plug it in and like do it exactly this way. Geometry is like, what do you have to work with? Like figure out an equation that would work. There's more than one way to do it and get the right answer. So I'm going to combine like terms. So 7x and x make 8x. 2 and 8 make 10. And it's a two-step equation. So I subtract and I divide. So what does x equal if anybody's got there yet? Nice. But we're not done. And this is where people got points taken off on their test. You have to plug it back in. So it says, what? Yes, that's correct. Good job. So it says find the measure of angle DCE. You could use the calculator to plug it back in. I'm going to show the work just so I don't lose anybody. DCE, it tells me DCE, and if you look at your picture, is 7x plus 2. I'm substituting 10 in. So I'm doing 7 times 10 plus 2. If you understand that, don't show it. It's totally fine. As long as you show work for solving for x, if you use the calculator to plug this back in, I'm fine with that. It doesn't matter to me. We're going to do one more problem together, and then you guys can work on this in class, so that way you don't have to do it at home. On the back, we're going to go to 16. So take a second, look at 16, try to read it, because we all love words in math class. Everybody hates these kinds of problems. I also hate these kinds of problems. They are annoying, but we have to do them. Okay, so it said angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair. The measure of angle 2 is 6 more than twice the measure of angle 1, and you're like, what the heck? And then you have to find the measure of angle 2. So when in doubt, let's draw it out. So let's draw a little picture. A linear pair are two angles, because they're a pair, that add to make 180. So I'm just going to draw something like that because that has two angles. Okay. The measure of angle 2 is 6 more than twice the measure of angle 1. A lot of you or some of you are really good at just like playing with the numbers and figuring that out. That's totally fine if you want to do that. I'm going to show you like how to write an equation for this. So if I say 6 more than twice the measure of angle 1, I don't know what angle 1 is. So because I don't know anything about it, I'm going to call it x. And then I'm just going to put that, so like angle 1 is x, and I'm going to put that in my picture. I'm just going to pick a side. It doesn't matter which side. I'm just going to call this side x. Okay. Now, how could I write 6 more than twice the measure of angle 1, which is x? So 6 more than twice the measure of x. What does 6 more mean? Plus, okay, so we agree we're adding 6, right, to something. Yes. Twice the measure is 2 times of that, so 2x. You're 6 more, you're adding 6. So the second angle is going to be represented with either 6 plus 2x or 2x plus 6. Either way, it's going to be the same thing. Either way, you're adding 6 to it. So I'll leave it as 2x plus 6. So now I have both angles. What am I adding to make in total? If it's a linear pair. What's a linear pair add to make? Is it 90 or 180? 180. So they're going to equal to 180. So then I can combine like terms, and then it's going to be a 2-step equation every single time. So 2x and x make how much? 3x. So I can minus 6 and divide. Oh, this is really big. What do you get for x? 58, yeah. Okay, so now you just need to decide. This angle is going to be 58. If I plug it back in, this is 58, okay? 2 times 58 plus 6, so I'm going to plug this back in. So 2 times 58. If I add 6, that makes 122. Is the answer that they're looking for, is it 58 degrees or is it 122 degrees? Because you have a 50-50 chance. It says find the measure of angle 2. Which one's angle 2? Is it the bigger one or the smaller one? The big one, because it says the measure of angle 2 is 6 more than twice the measure of angle 1. So that's where I put here. So your actual answer is 122 degrees. Okay, so the ones that you can cross out, the ones that you can skip are 15. So you can just scroll it out. You don't have to do 15. You can also skip 18, 19, and 20. So just cross out these bottom ones. 18, 19, 20 you can cross out. The front will build you up to the back. So I would start on the front. Start with the easy ones, okay? You're just either subtracting to make 180 or you're subtracting to make 90. Vertical angles are congruent, okay? And then as you go through the paper, it will get a little bit harder. If you get stuck, let me know. When you get to a problem that has X, Y's, and Z's, start with X, find X, and then find Y, and then find Z. It kind of goes in order, okay? Let me know if you get stuck. I'm updating grades for IXLs and stuff. So if you get stuck, let me know. I can help you or ask your neighbor. And that's pretty much it.